Hello.
Hey, pal.
How are ya?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. What is new in Mexico?
Mexico is cold for me at 70. Um,
70.
yeah.
Are you insane?
I think it's the humidity, right? It makes it worse. No?
Humidity makes it like stickier.
Yeah. Well,
I'm
I
not
don't know.
going
It's
there.
cold for me, so I'm wearing
Wearing a
see, I'm
sweater.
wearing a hoodie. But yeah, but
Please,
everything is good.
please guess how cold it is in New York right now.
I I I don't know.
It's 7 degrees today.
7
Seven
without the zero I'm
without the
at.
zero. Yeah.
Wow. Maybe I shouldn't be complaining, but no, but yeah, no, it's a very sunny day today, and it's been a sunny week. How about you? Is it snowing in New York?
It did snow over the weekend, actually. We got like maybe 3, 4 inches, not much. They got more snow in Jersey, where I'm originally from, but up
Mm.
here in New York, a little bit less because we're right on the water.
Wait,
So,
so is the beach snowy too in Jersey?
yeah.
That's
Hmm.
so cool.
Yeah.
It should be, that's interesting. I don't know. I mean, I do live very close to the beach, but never a snowy beach. Never
I
ever.
would hope not. The day it snows by you,
It's the end of the
we have
world.
some issues. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but I mean, how are you, pal? Any
I'm good.
updates?
Um, Nothing huge this week, to be honest. Doing a lot of job searching. Anyone out there has any recs? I'm all ears. But yeah, it's been taking up most of my time, as anyone out there who has gone through the job search process probably knows. It's a very competitive market right now. So it's been a lot of networking, a lot of talking with people, a lot of outreach, a lot of applying, a lot of writing cover letters, a lot of redoing my resume, and so on and so forth. But nothing super exciting. So, but I'll keep you guys updated on my search.
Love it. Perfect. Well, we're very excited today. Welcome everyone to the Golden Hair Podcast, your go-to space for lifting each other up, empowering women from all walks of life, and celebrating women chasing career dreams, embracing every success, big or small. We are so excited for this next episode where we'll interview sustainable lingerie designer Chloe Grant. Are you excited, pal?
I'm super excited for this one. I actually met Chloe. Well, I don't want to spoil it, but I met her last year. And so I'm really excited to have her on this episode.
It's going to be great. So, are you ready, guys?
Woo! Let's dive into it. Hi, everybody. We're so excited to welcome our second guest to the pod. I actually met Chloe during New York Fashion Week last year at a Remake Fashion Show event, so I'm super excited for this conversation. Chloe Grant is a freelance intimate apparel and swimwear designer. Through her designs under the name Created by Chloe Grant, she aims to work with small, sustainable companies to create collections that make customers feel beautiful without harming the planet. It's great to have you here, Chloe.
Hi, I'm so excited.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I think we can start with some like introduction questions. Where did you grow up as a kid? What do you think your career would be?
So I'm from Birmingham, which for anyone who's not from the UK, it's sort of slap bang in the middle, like 2 hours north of London. And although it's a big city, there's not really a fashion scene here. But yeah, I love where I grew up. I grew up sort of outside of Birmingham, nearer to the countryside. There's a really big park near where I am. So I've always sort of loved going in there, and I think that does influence my work quite a lot. And in terms of what I wanted to be when I was little, I was split between two things, which I kind of think have both sort of come to fruition in their own way. I mean, one was a fashion designer, and I think you can pretty much tick that one off. And I also really wanted to be an author. And although I haven't written any books, I do write for a magazine, a sustainable fashion magazine. So I feel like, yeah, my inner younger self, I think, would be very happy with the way things have turned out.
That's amazing. Can you give a quick kind of overview of what Created by Chloe really is, what the mission is, what you offer, what does your brand stand for? I know I give a quick overview in my intro, but just a little more background for our listeners.
Yeah, so as you said, I'm a sustainable intimates apparel designer. So I work with brands that offer lingerie, swimwear, nightwear, activewear, but with a sustainable twist. Because a lot of times those items can be seen as quite easily disposable, or you wear your swimsuit once every summer and then it's sort of like the next year rolls around. It's like, let's get something new. So I try and work with brands that are really focused on creating products that last. So I work with brands and help them design their collections. So somebody might come to me with just a sort of overview of what they want to do, but they don't have the skills to actually make a tech pack, which is what you would send off to a factory. So I'll come in and do the sort of digital and technical design side of things. And I also help with choosing sustainable fabrics, which is obviously a massive part of making a collection sustainable. So yeah, I sort of come in with the how to do it. If you've got an idea of a brand you want to make, I can be like, okay, we can make your dreams a reality.
That's so cool. And, while doing the research for your interview, we came across a term that we have never heard before. It's called contour fashion. And I believe you have a degree specifically in contour fashion. So for our listeners out there, can you give a little background on what the term means and what inspired you to pursue this niche field to study in college?
Yeah, it's definitely niche. I feel like most people haven't heard of it. It basically means anything that contours the body. So lingerie, somewhere obviously it's right on our skin, and a lot of it has boning in it, and it will sort of distort the shape of the body or contour it into a new shape. And that's kind of what it covers. Anything that's directly on the skin. I first knew I wanted to study it when I was about 14, and I watched the Victoria's Secret fashion show, and I was just like, oh my god, I love this. I just want to be involved in this pretty girly world. And obviously nowadays have some different views on Victoria's Secret as a brand, but lingerie and the love for lingerie has definitely not disappeared. There's only, I think, to my knowledge, at least when I studied there was only 3 places in the world that offered a contour specific degree, with the place that I went, which was De Montfort in Leicester in England, being the oldest one of those. So it started out as a corsetry school, and then which allowed women of the time, I think it was founded about 75 years ago, so it helped women who were working in factories to actually gain a qualification in what they were really highly skilled at, and then turn that into a career. And then that's transformed later on, being taken over into a different university and turned into the contour fashion degree that I did. So a bit niche, but absolutely loved it.
That's super interesting. So I guess with that degree, you could have went and worked for any large designer that you wanted. What made you pursue kind of an entrepreneurial path instead of just working for, or have you worked for a larger design agency in the past? Did you not like it? How did you get to the point where you were like, you know what, I want to go out on my own and be a freelancer?
I think there's a few different things that sort of fed into me ending up where I am right now. One being that where I'm based in England, in Birmingham, as I said, it's not exactly a fashion capital. So getting the job in fashion would have required me moving, probably to London, which wasn't something I particularly wanted to do. And I love travelling. I love that sort of nomadic lifestyle. And I thought, okay, well, if I can get myself started as a freelancer and I can work from anywhere, that's the sort of life I really wanted for myself. So I was like, okay, why not just give it a go? If it fails, then I've literally just I've only been graduated 2 years. So I was sort of like, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. I've got the rest of my life to go and get a proper, in air quotes, fashion job. So yeah, and I also, when we were at uni, the lecturers kept saying, you've got to graduate, go and work at a really big design agency or a big brand and get some experience under your belt. But in my eyes, I knew that I couldn't go and even for a year go and work at somewhere like Boohoo or, Primark. I couldn't do it. It didn't sit well with my ethics and my morals. And so I thought, I'm not going to just go and work somewhere for the sake of it, knowing that what I was making was having such a horrific effect on the planet. That just didn't weigh up in my head. I was like, okay, well, I'll get experience, but at the cost of a planet that I love. No. So yeah, I decided, okay, let's focus on doing something myself, and then at least then I get to make the rules. I get to decide who I work with, what materials are used, and how it sort of all pans out. So yeah, I guess it was to do with creating a job and a life that I was proud of.
Well, I think that's so inspiring that you decided to stay true to yourself. And I guess, I mean, I've always admired entrepreneurs and just business owners because I don't know how to start. So I think it would be interesting for you to share what was the hardest part about breaking out on your own. What were the challenges that you faced?
I mean, obviously, financially, that's always going to, I'd say, be the biggest barrier. I'm quite lucky I can still live at home, and so obviously that takes away a big financial stress. But that feeling of watching people who graduated at the same time as you go and get a fashion job and follow that typical route, and you're struggling to find clients and you're thinking, oh, like at least okay, I might not agree with what's going on morally, but at least they're getting money coming in every month. That does make you think like, oh, to hell with it, I'll just go and get another job. But I think, yeah, you just got to remind yourself, okay, focus on what you're doing. And I mean, quite a lot of freelancers I know, including myself, have a part-time job. I work in retail as well, so that does sort of take the stress off the money side of things. But I'd say that's probably the biggest barrier. Other than that, I guess actually making connections and getting those projects going can be quite hard. I mean, I know I definitely struggled with that when I first started, and even, you know, in situations you're just not used to, like in New York where I met Grace, it was so, you know, it's quite overwhelming. It's a big room of people that you're sort of like, especially in New York, it was like, oh my god, everyone here is so cool and so established. And even though that might not even be the case, it feels like that. And so you're sort of having to constantly be like, okay, I deserve to be here, and I deserve to go and talk to these people and make the connections, because one, it's obviously great for your business and for your brand and getting yourself out there, but also you don't know where those connections will lead and what they'll add to your life. I mean, I wouldn't be sat here talking to you guys right now, right, if we hadn't had a little chat.
Yeah, networking is such an important topic for, I think, women in every single space. So that's a really good point to make, and something that I definitely struggled with starting out, and I think I still struggle with. It is very daunting when you're in a room with so like complete strangers and you need to get into that mindset to be like, okay, this can bring my career forward if I just have this conversation with 10 people here. I just need to sit down and really focus on who I'm talking to and what I want to say to them. Can be a very difficult mindset to get into. Great. So for the second people look at your LinkedIn and your website, it's obviously very clear from everything you're saying that you're focused on sustainable fashion. But I have no idea what that really means. I know it's good for the planet, but how do you actually incorporate like bio-based and recycled or ethically sourced materials into your designs?
So I sort of work in two different ways. So I've worked with some brands in the past where, for example, I worked with Queer Loops. They are a upcycling brand based in Italy. So they came to me and basically said, we've got X amount of this cotton fabric, which is dead stock, which means it's basically discarded remnants of fabric. So if a bigger brand will buy, I don't know, let's just say 100 meters of fabric, and then they only end up using 80 of that for a collection, they're just sort of like, oh, we don't need that anymore, because they can't make another collection out of that 20 meters. There's not going to be enough. Whereas for a small brand or a sustainable brand, they're like, well, I can use that 20 meters, even if it only makes 5 things. That's fine, because it'll be a limited collection. So yeah, that's one sort of avenue of it. So they came to me and said, yeah, we've got this much, make something. And so we collaborated on that. But if it's to do with working with startups or small brands who they already have, you know, a clear vision of what they want and the colour palette or whatever, it will be a case of either trying to source dead stock fabric that suits that, or working with recycled fabrics. So there's a great one for swimwear, which is made out of recycled fishing nets. that's sort of like the go-to in the industry now for sustainable swimwear. But there's also lots of other things like hemp swimwear fabric. There's a whole plethora of bio-based fabrics that are really exciting. So yeah, it's just about incorporating different fabrics and different ideas and not immediately just going for polyester, which quite a lot of fast fashion do. And then also in terms of working with the actual range plan of a collection, it's thinking, okay, well, what things have you already got in your brand's repertoire that we can try and get your customers to buy just one piece that will work with something they already own from you or something like that. Just thinking logically about things to create a collection that doesn't encourage people to buy it all, basically, which might sound a bit counterintuitive business-wise, but if you are an ethical brand, that's what you should be pushing. You should be pushing for people to think slowly and think carefully about everything they're buying, and I would hope that the things I design help with that.
Of course. I think I've never heard of that. I think the Italian company you mentioned, is that a common practice for them to like donate or sell the dead stock? Is that
So they sort of source it and then they'll work with designers. So they've only done a few collections. I think they did one with coats, one with tote bags, and then the one they did with me was pyjamas. So they're a small brand as well, but there are quite a lot of dead stock companies, especially across Europe. I'm not sure about elsewhere, but it's definitely up and coming in London as well. There's a place called The Materialist, and they have a showroom in London, which is just like dead stock fabric heaven. So yeah, it's a very exciting part of fashion that I think is really gaining traction now. And I really hope it sort of becomes the norm, because there's just so much waste. It can be turned into something beautiful. And that's the way of looking at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I mean, if there are any fashion industries listening to us right now, I think that's a great practice. I mean, I'm thinking even they could donate it to fashion schools for students to work with. It's amazing. So I guess you sort of mentioned this earlier, but what are some of the challenges that you face trying to use these fabrics and be sustainable? I think it's hard to compete with these big fashion companies. I think for the consumers, it's easier sometimes to just buy something that's cheaper or that it's right around the corner. So how do you face that challenge?
I think realistically, the only way to overcome that challenge is to educate consumers, which I try and do across my social media. And also, I mentioned briefly earlier that I write for a sustainable fashion magazine. So that's called People Over Product. And they sort of aim to reach people who aren't particularly involved in the sustainable fashion circle. Because I think when I'm talking on my social media, I'm fully aware it's probably only reaching people who kind of already think the same way I do, because else they probably wouldn't be following me, right? So it's about getting that message further out. And I try and talk to people as much as I can, whether I'm not in like a business sense, just to my friends and anyone really, about their consumer habits and changing it, because it is still the norm, unfortunately, that people will just buy fast fashion. And you know what, I do completely understand. We live in a world that's sort of geared towards that and makes it so easy. I mean, you can order something and it's here the next day. Why would you, in theory, wait for like a handmade item that takes 3 weeks using organic fabrics that cost 5 times as much? On face value, you're like, well, yeah, obviously I'm going to go for the cheap thing. But then I think if you educate that person and explain why and what's gone wrong, I guess, to lead to that being the norm, and slowly unpick the ideas of what they think the fashion industry is like. Most people I've spoken to and had that discussion with have then changed how they shop. And so I think there's no use, changing things at the design point of view until you change the consumer's perspective as well. They sort of go hand in hand. So I think I don't shy away from that, because there's no point me making stuff with my clients that will never sell because everyone just shops on Shein. Yeah.
I think I've seen like a big shift in even my personal life, people not shopping on apps like Shein, for example. Do you see that in your own work as well? Where do you think the intimate apparel swim industry, or just the sustainable fashion industry in general, where do you think that's going? Do you think it's going in a positive way? I know there's so much going on in the world right now, but do you think that is something that is moving positively, or is it kind of still hitting a wall?
I would hope it's moving positively. And it is quite hard to tell, I guess, from my perspective, being so entrenched in the sustainable fashion movement, because within my little bubble, I'm like, yeah, of course everyone thinks this way. Yeah, it's going to be safe. Then that's obviously not the reality. All you have to do is go down to like a shopping mall on a Saturday and you see that's not the reality. But I do definitely think people are, I guess, just thinking more about they're spending some money on something that's so cheap it immediately breaks. And I think that is beginning to annoy people, to be honest. And I think that alone may actually make people change how they shop, because they're like, well, actually, I don't want to buy something that I have to replace every month. I've seen that sort of shift, because I think with the rise of Shein and Temu and all that sort of thing, it's sort of like it's so cheaply made that it's bound to basically disintegrate in your hands after 2 wears. And because people have been shopping at these places for the past couple of years, they're now seeing the top that they loved last summer come out of the wardrobe and just have holes in and the straps fallen off. I think they're thinking, okay, well, I don't want to buy from there this summer because I don't want by next summer my whole wardrobe to be gone again. So I think that general annoyance, I think, is enough to propel people to change. I just really hope so. And I think stuff like the Buy Now documentary on Netflix, it's on Netflix, it's mainstream, people will see it pop up on their tellies. It's like they're going to be more likely to watch it, whereas it's not some niche individually made film that's been made by someone who's really into the sustainable fashion space, which people will watch and like it's probably an absolutely amazing, beautiful film, but people aren't sticking it on their tellies of an evening with their family. Whereas if something's on a big platform like Netflix, I feel like there's a chance for real change, because there's just so many people who are still lacking education on the whole sustainable fashion movement, which I hope is changing.
Yeah, no, we agree. And it just happened to me last week. I wore something once, I cleaned it, and now it's awful. And for me, it's like, I just bought it. I bought it for a trip and I wore it and then I cleaned it and then it looks like it has holes in it. But I want to talk about your designs. I see in your background, we can see one. It's gorgeous. What's one design you've created that you feel best represents your brand and why?
I still think, to be honest, it's probably my graduate collection, because that's the only collection I've made that was just for me and for my brand. Since then, I've worked with other brands and other visions, but my graduate collection was made using secondhand wedding dresses, which were then just cut up and use the fabric and the beads and the sequins and the lace, everything I could from these dresses to make lingerie. So it was a 4-piece collection, 2 of which were shown in New York last September. And I don't think from looking at them you would think they were secondhand wedding dresses, which is kind of what I love. I think it really proves that point of you can take something and turn it into something utterly different, completely transformed and beautiful. I would definitely say that collection, if someone was like, okay, yeah, what's your aesthetic, what's your design sort of motto, I'd be like, okay, here's that. Have a look at this, because it was all secondhand. Anything that was new I sourced ethically, so they had pearls on there, but they were ethically found pearls. So it was mainly the secondhand wedding dresses and then some vintage lace as well, but everything on it I was proud of, which I think is something I want to feel every time I make something. I don't want to be thinking, oh, okay, yeah, I'm really proud of the design, it looks really pretty, but I know that it's made of horrible things. The design you can see behind me, that was a collaboration with a stylist who's based in New York, Kate Kravchenko, and we got a night dress from a charity shop, so it was actually £2, and I did a little live stream with her showing how you could transform it into a cami top and a pair of ruffled knickers. And it's a tutorial that I think anyone could do, whether you've got a lot of sewing experience or not. And I think that was just trying to show, anyone can do this, anyone can get involved. So in terms of recent collaborations and recent projects, that's something I'm really proud of, because I do want to get more people to feel like they can get involved with this.
Yeah, definitely. On that note, I think there's a lot of myths going around about sustainable fashion. And what would be one, if you could debunk one myth today on this podcast, what would that be to our audience? What myth would you want to debunk about sustainable fashion as a whole?
I think this sort of expectation for you to be perfect from the get-go, I think needs to be debunked straight away, because nobody is perfect. Even if you meet someone who's been in the sustainable fashion space for God knows how many years. I mean, I've met people who've been practicing this since, way back when. We're talking like 40 plus years. But no one's perfect. They might try their best and make the most ethical choices. But at the end of the day, everyone's consuming, right? So unless you literally never buy anything ever again, which I think would just be a bit impossible, you're still going to consume. So you've just got to think about how to do it in the best way possible. But if you're currently shopping from Shein or other fast fashion brands, which you've recognised yourself isn't the best thing to do. It's not good for the planet, and it's not good for the people who are making it. If you even then just say, okay, I'm not going to buy fast fashion for a month. Let's say you're currently doing 3 orders a month. If you don't do anything for a month, that's still better than you just carrying on as normal. I'm not expecting you to stop shopping at Shein and immediately start buying organic hemp clothing from a small business. Like that's probably too big of a jump. But to just try and untrain yourself from what you're currently doing, because I think there is a real sort of negativity or guilt tripping that people like to do, where if people trip up once and buy something from H&M, it's this sort of like, oh my God, how could you do this? You said you were going to be sustainable. And it's like, yeah, obviously it's not the best thing to have done, but it's not the end of the world. And if you love that item and take care of it and try not to shop there again, then that's okay. You don't have to then immediately sort of relapse back into shopping that way. So I think, yeah, try not to be too hard on yourself, but make little steps forward.
I love that advice. We don't have to guilt trip everyone into changing their ways so drastically. So I really love that mindset, and I love that goal. Maybe we should set that goal here in the podcast. You know how they do like dry January? Maybe you can do sustainable February.
I love that.
We can definitely do that. One of the things we want to do with this podcast is inspire women and let them know they can achieve whatever they want, such as your unique story. So for those aspiring to enter the world of fashion design with a focus on sustainability, what advice would you give them?
Educate yourself on what sustainability means. I spent a lot of time, obviously I was at uni, so I was being educated there, but on top of that, I tried to access as many online webinars and live streams I could about sustainable fashion. Have a look in your local city or town, see if there's any sustainable groups going on, because there's more and more popping up all the time. If you're based in the UK, there's Sustainable Fashion Week every September. There's usually loads of events going on. So I think it's really, really important to go out and create a community and get people around you who are thinking the same sort of things. Because, I mean, definitely in my case, when I first started learning about the fashion industry and seeing how bad it was sort of like a spiraling moment, right? It was like, oh no, now I've got to like have this weight on my shoulders and deal with it by myself, which obviously isn't the case. But if you surround yourself with like-minded people, and in terms of actually getting started career-wise, if you've got some education under your belt, I definitely recommend looking into ACE, that's EIIS, which is the European Institute for Innovation of Sustainability. Bit of a mouthful, but they offer amazing courses on fashion sustainability, food sustainability. But there's also lots of other courses popping up all over the world, lots and lots of universities who do short courses or sort of booster courses. So I just try and get yourself as educated on the topic as possible so that then you can go out into your industry and make change that's really built on a foundation of knowledge.
Interesting. Food sustainability in a course. That'll have to be a different podcast topic, but
Yeah.
that sounds super interesting too. So what impact do you hope that your designs have on women who wear them? Not just how they feel, but also how they see themselves and present themselves to the world.
So aesthetically, everything I design, I try and make as feminine as possible, because I really see femininity as something really strong and beautiful. And that was actually the basis of my graduate collection, that idea of, okay, why don't we associate everything that's in this collection, that's, lace, pearl, soft nude colours, why don't we see that and think strong? It's sort of like that's been taken away from us. So I really want everyone to be able to wear pretty things, but also feel badass, basically. So, yeah, and obviously with lingerie, it's something that's so personal and it's such an item that's so close to your body and it's usually worn in quite intimate settings, or even if it's not used in that case, it's on your body and it's close to your skin every day. You want to feel confident. You want to look in the mirror and think, like, yes, I look really good. And so the thought that someone could put on something that I've made and feel really good about themselves and feel really confident makes me really, really happy. That's why I do what I do.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I love that. I need that spark of confidence. I might buy something from you right after this episode. So, why don't we dive into more personal questions just so our listeners can get to know Chloe better? Why is self-care so important? Self-care being recharging and having a healthy balance between work and your personal life. Why do you think self-care is so important for women of all ages and all walks of life?
I think because self-care, especially for women, is quite out of the box. For years and years and years, women were just sort of seen as, they look after the house, they cook, they clean. So for women to actually turn around and be like, well, yeah, okay, I can do all those things still, but I'm also going to take time for myself is quite rational, I'd say. So I think it's just really, really important for mental health. I know myself, I always designate time out to clock in with myself. I journal a lot, I do yoga a lot, I walk a lot, and I think it's paramount to having a good life. You can't succeed, I don't think, in anything else in your life if you're not succeeding in self-care. It has to really be a priority, one that I think has been taken away from women for centuries probably. So for us to reclaim that and have a gentle existence is just perfect.
How do you personally like to recharge when you're not designing?
Designing does sort of bring that sort of creative joy, so that it doesn't particularly drain me, I guess, which I think is part of the reason why I chose it as a career, and as we discussed before, why I sort of went off on my own, because I wanted a career that brings me joy. So I'm very, very lucky that I'm not working in an office that makes me think like, oh, I just want to go home and do something else. So I just like to state for the record, feel very, very lucky to be doing what I do. But obviously, that said, you also need to switch off, which sometimes I do struggle with, I have to say. But as I said, I love yoga, walking, journaling, reading, and anything that gets me off my phone, I feel like is a really big thing. I try and there's a challenge called the 1,000 Hours Outside Challenge, which was set up by an American family, I think, when they found out that the average American child's screen time is 1,000 hours a year, which is just crazy. And so they said, okay, well, if you have the time to spend 1,000 hours on an iPad, you definitely have the time to spend 1,000 hours outside in the world. So I try and do that. I mean, I know I'm not an American child, but I think that knowledge of knowing that you are potentially spending that amount of time on a screen kind of made me feel a bit sick, to be honest. And so, yeah, I've committed myself to trying to do 1,000 hours for the past couple of years. I haven't quite hit it, but I've got quite close. And I think even just like trying to push yourself to do it will obviously make you go outside more. And that's definitely helped. I think getting out in nature always makes me feel better. And I think it then feeds back into the creativity, because I always come up with my best ideas when I'm out on a walk. No AirPods in, just listening to the world and letting my thoughts sort of run wild. That's where my best ideas come. So I think it has to go hand in hand. You can't expect yourself to be as productive or successful as you could be if you don't also let yourself have time off.
Of course. I love that. I think I'm going to definitely try that 1,000 hours a year without any digital connection. I think for Grace and I, we're both in the marketing and digital world. So that's going to be hard, but I think it's very much needed because we work with our gadgets specifically. So it's amazing. I'll definitely do that. But I love asking this question in the pod. If you could have lunch with any badass women from history or pop culture or whatever, who would it be and what would you ask her?
So many. I feel like I would have to host like a big dinner party with a massive table to fit everyone that I want to talk to. But I think if I had to choose just one, it would probably be Ursula de Castro. So she's a really big figure in the sustainable fashion industry. She was sort of like a forerunner, I guess, of bringing it more mainstream. And I think just for the wealth of knowledge that she must possess in that brain of hers, I would have to say her. But I mean, there's so many women that I would want to sit down and have a chat with, honestly. So it's like, even like not in the fashion industry, I always love sitting chatting to people who do something like crazily different to what I do, because you never know what you're going to learn from someone and what you can add to your own life from it. So yeah.
Definitely. Well, it's been an amazing interview. Thank you so much. We have one last question for you, which we like to ask at the end of all of our interviews. If your life had a theme song, this is the most important question of the entire interview. If your life had a theme song, what would it be?
I would have to say The Nights by Avicii, because when I watched the music video for that, with that guy travelling all over the world when I was younger, I just thought, right, that's going to be me. That's what I'm going to do. And I actually went travelling last year and made my own music video to that song. So I think that basically is the soundtrack of my life.
That's so cool.
Amazing. You'll have to send that video our way.
Yeah.
That's so fun.
Yeah. That's such an inspiring song, for sure. I watched his documentary actually 2 weeks ago. So powerful and inspiring. So yeah, that's definitely a powerful song too. So Chloe, thank you so much for sharing your incredible journey with us. Your passion for sustainability, creativity, and empowering women through your designs is truly inspiring. We're so excited to see what's next for your brand Created. And to our listeners, we hope this episode leaves you feeling inspired to embrace your values in every aspect of your life, whether it's through your wardrobe, your work, or the way you see yourself. And make sure to follow us on Instagram at Gold Hair Podcast for updates and great content. And don't forget to tune in. We have weekly episodes you don't want to miss. And see you next week.
Thanks, everyone.